Hare Krishna everyone, we're continuing to read the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the book by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 2. Contents of the Gita summarized. Text 15. Yam hina vyathayantyete purusham purusharshabha sama dukkha sukham dhiram samritatvaya kalpate. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Purport. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashram institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order, sannyas, is a painstaking situation. But one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life, in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family relationships, to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a kshatriya, he is advised to persevere, even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet for a higher cause he took sannyas and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage. Text 16. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubhayorapi drishtontas, tvanayostatvadarshabhi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Purport. There is no endurance of the changing body. That the body is changing every moment by the actions and reactions of the different cells is admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever-changing and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalist and personalist. In the Vishnu Purana 2.12.38, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotim Shri Vishnur Bhavanani Vishnu. The words existent and non-existent refer only to spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of the truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme Being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutra, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature, as will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is possible. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance. So if we're under the spell of ignorance, such clear knowledge is impossible to understand. And to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. Text 17. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartum arhati. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Purport. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body, in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. The soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in size. So you take a hair point, upper portion of the hair point, and you divide it by 10,000. In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 5.9, it is confirmed. Balagrashata bhagasya shatadha kalpitasya cha bhago jiva savigyeya sachananta tyaya kalpate. Quote, when the upper portion of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Similarly, the same version is stated. Kesha grashata bhagasya shatam shah sadrishatmakaha jiva sukshma svarupoyam sankyatito hichit kanaha. Quote, there are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms, which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom, smaller than the material atoms. And such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body, as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. Interestingly, Prabhupada says about the current of the spirit soul, and yesterday I was just talking to my husband about how when the person's heart stops, and there's such a thing as clinical death, right? So doctor can put refibrillator, if I'm not mistaken, refibrillator, and he can give the electric current so that person can come back to life even when the heart is stopped. But that can only happen within a certain time frame, which technically means when the soul can still come back to the body, when consciousness can still return to the body. Because if, say, actually my Prabhu told me that I should Google it, because there have been instances when even after 5 minutes person was able to be revived. But say if it's few hours, or if it's one day, no matter how many times you try to do that, then it will not happen, no matter how many currents you give. So yes, so this means, why there is a certain time frame? Because according to the law of nature, when the soul is leaving the body, and basically there's a certain time frame when the doctors can still help the soul to remain in a certain body, and everybody knows that. So Bhagavad Gita confirms that any layman can understand that body minus consciousness is a dead body. So consciousness, the spirit soul, gives the current all over the body. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In the Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.9, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is further explained. Esha nuratma cetasa veditavyo. Esho nuratma cetasa veditavyo yasmin pranah panchadha samvivesha. Pranayshchittam sarvam otam prajanam Yasmin Vishudhevi Bhavatyeshatma. Quote, the soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air: prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. Is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. Interesting. What an interesting verse. First is that I remember disciples of Srila Prabhupada asked him, they said that what about heart transplants? The soul is situated within the heart. And it's a known procedure that the heart is transplanted from a healthy person to a diseased person. And Prabhupada explained that it's just like changing the seat. If I'm sitting on a chair, somebody brings me another chair, you just sit there. Because technically, yes, the soul is situated within the body, but the sitting place is the 5 kinds of air. The soul is floating in those 5 kinds of air: prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. And I remember in 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in Uddhava Gita, there's Bhagavad Gita, there's Uddhava Gita, when Krishna spoke knowledge to Uddhava. Over there, Krishna says that the biggest power or biggest strength, he says, is in prana. Pranayama, prana. So, and here we just read, when the soul is purified from the contamination of 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. Now we hear from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we hear from other literatures how sadhakas, spiritual practitioners, they're able, by the power of their spiritual practice, they're able to spiritualize their body, which means they don't need to die in order to do spiritual activities, go to the spiritual world, travel. Like Gopakumar, he was traveling all over the universe. He didn't change his body, meaning like he didn't leave this body to get another body. He spiritualized his body. There are many instances when the body, even in this life, is spiritualized, and then spiritual influence is exhibited. So, and that's why the bodies of great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada, they're given samadhi rather than, like their bodies are considered spiritual. So, when we're purified from the contamination of 5 kinds of material air, spiritual influence is exhibited. Okay, unquote. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of air, encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all-pervading Vishnu Tattva, meaning we are not God, no matter how many times people may tell us that. I actually met one person who told me that he is God. And he told me that I am God, that little piggies running outside were God, we're all God. But it's insane, because we are atomic in size. From all perspective, like from all reason and logic and common sense, we're not God. But there are people who really strongly believe that. And unfortunately, they are trying to prove it by quoting Vedic scriptures. That's why Srila Prabhupada strongly, again and again, defeats such arguments. New people, they may wonder why so many times we are being explained this. You will not believe how ridiculous it gets when such, they're called Mayavadis, when they are like trying to prove the fact that Hare Krishna. So, continuing. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity. And because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert, foolishly, that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there, in the heart, along with the super soul. And thus all the energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles, which carry the oxygen from the lungs, gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha, or superior energy. So whether one follows Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of the spirit soul in the body. And the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the Personality of Godhead Himself. Jai. So thank you so much for tuning in today. The link to this book is in the description. Please check out our website, shravanamdiaries.com, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Yes, just to clarify and to correct myself, it's not defibrillator, it's defibrillator, and it's done during cardiac arrest, which is usually up to 8 minutes, and it's something between life and death, the cardiac arrest, but the longest one was recorded to be 8 hours, so that's very interesting, the longest that the person was in cardiac arrest between life and death. So yes, so this was all, of course, explained how it's connected with the soul and the consciousness leaving the body, that any sane man who has common sense understands that what is that body without consciousness, and how it all started with the current that the soul gives, perceived as consciousness. Yes, so I just wanted to clarify and correct myself with the medical terms. I'm sorry, I should have actually researched this before talking about it. Hare Krishna, see you. Sorry.